it's Teresa. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am back with my June wrap-up. In June I didn't read that many books. I only ended up reading 4 and DNFing 1, so 4 and a little bit, I guess. In part, that's because I had exams and I had to study a lot, but also I was gone for like 2 weekends. One weekend I was in Amsterdam, and you can go check out the vlog if you haven't seen it yet. And the other weekend we were wine tasting in wine country kind of thing. So I didn't get to read a ton, obviously. Plus, one of the books I read was ludicrously long, so it's just a combination of all those things. So I am still glad that I ended up getting through 4 books in total and a little bit. As for the stats, in terms of pages, I read 2,187 pages, which comes to about 73 pages a day and about 437 pages a book. So while the pages a day isn't very long, the pages per book is quite a bit more than usual. In terms of ratings, I had 1 DNF, which I didn't rate, 1 3-star, 2 4-star, and 1 5-star book. So pretty good, I would say. That comes to an average rating of 3, and in this case, because I didn't rate the DNF, I kind of just gave it 0 stars, so that's why it's this low. When we look at the average rating for Goodreads, as I did last month for the first time, Goodreads users in average rated these books together 3.98 stars, so almost a complete star more than me, but again, that's quite probably because of the DNF. In terms of genres, I had completely different books all around. I had 1 fantasy book, 1 thriller, 1 classic/romance book, 1 historical fiction, and 1 literary fiction with magical realism elements. In terms of settings, we had 1 book set in a fantasy setting, 2 set in England, 1 in New Guinea, and 1 in Japan. For release years, I had 1 book released in 1817 and all other 4 between 2000 and 2017. In terms of authors, I had 3 female and 2 male authors, of which 3 were new to me and 2 were not. And then we had only, I would say, 1 pretty popular and hyped book this month, with 4 that are more obscure. And that is it for all of my stats. Now let's jump right into the wrap-up. So let's just get the DNF out of the way. You guys probably already know what it is, and that is Malice by Quinn. This is the first book in the Faithful and Fallen series. If you've watched my last book haul, you saw that I was quite regretful because I had bought actually this entire 4-book series and ended up DNFing the first book after only 50 pages. Because some of you told me in the comments to return it and try and return it, I actually did and got my money back, so thank you so much for that. I don't know why that thought didn't cross my mind somehow, but there we go. 1 problem less in my life, I guess. This is a high fantasy series, and it follows a huge cast of characters. There's so many different people that it was really hard to keep track of and actually care about, even just in the first 50 pages. The world is very stereotypical, I would say. As far as I could tell, there wasn't really anything that was particularly unique about this world. If you just picture your stereotypical high fantasy world with dragons and angels and demons and the good and evil fighting, that sort of thing, that's exactly what this book was. I bought it originally because it had such good reviews on Goodreads, but I think it's just not for me. Maybe some people that exclusively read this genre and that really are looking for this type of thing in a high fantasy will enjoy it, and that's probably the people that did enjoy it. But for me, I just want something new out of a book. I don't want to just read the same book over and over and over, and this just was not for me. The next book I read was a thriller that was, I think, the first book actually I read this month, and I have done a review about it, or I should say a rant review about it, because I didn't really enjoy it, and that was The Breakdown by B.A. Paris. It seems I lied to you because I actually did rate this book 2 stars and not 3. Don't worry, I checked. I did take that into account in my stats. I actually calculated those correctly. I just didn't tell you. This is a thriller, and it follows a woman that takes a back road to her home one night, through the woods, and there she sees a car that seems to be broken down. In it she sees a woman, but she doesn't seem to be in distress, and because the weather's really, really bad and she's crazy, in a crazy hurry to get home, she just leaves. And the next day she finds out that that woman has actually been murdered, and she starts to feel really guilty about it, and also starts feeling paranoid and like the killer might now be after her. This book was terrible, and if you want to hear more about it, I recommend you watch my rant video. It does include spoilers, so be warned, but I honestly don't think that this book is worth picking up. And so, you know, it's up to you, but I honestly don't think that this is something that you would want to experience for yourself. So if you agree with that assessment, then go and check it out. I just thought it was really poorly written. You had to suspend your disbelief for so many things that it just got really, really frustrating. I don't like these types of thrillers that are so far from realistic. Like, that's what makes thrillers creepy and like scary to me, is when I think that this could actually happen, and there's no way in hell that this story as it is written in this book could ever actually happen. That's how out there it kind of is. And I just didn't really enjoy it, and yeah, more thoughts in my video. My first 4-star read was kind of a surprise to me. I just randomly bought this book while I was in Amsterdam in like a reduced price bookstore, and I read it in a fairly short amount of time and really enjoyed it, and that was Euphoria by Lily King. This is a historical fiction novel loosely based on the life of Margaret Mead, or not the life, on her expedition which she did with her husband and like her former husband and her future husband, something like that. I don't know the specifics of the reality of it, but in this book we follow a female anthropologist in 1933 and her husband and another man that they meet on their expeditions in New Guinea as they kind of try to gather some information on certain tribes that live there. And their lives become intertwined. It kind of becomes sort of like a love triangle in a way, and it's just really well written. There's not much plot to speak of, so if that's something that is like really important to you, you might not enjoy this book as much. But I thought it was really atmospheric, really well written, and I just really cared about the characters. In particular, like the character of Andrew Bankson, who is sort of the narrator of this story, and I just thought it was really nice, really well written. The ending is quite sad, but overall, I really enjoyed it, and I definitely recommend you pick it up. It's a very short read, as you can tell, and yeah, it's just worth the read. My next 4-star read was my Everest. I feel like I've been reading this book for far longer than like the 3 weeks I've actually been reading it. And that's also a loose term because I didn't consistently read it because it was just so freaking long. And that is 1Q84 by Haruki Murakami. Yes, I finally finished it. I read this book cover to cover this month. It is 1,318 pages, which is a number I will never be able to forget again because it has burned itself in my mind forever now. This is technically a trilogy, but it's sort of written like the Lord of the Rings books, where the ends of the individual books don't actually end. The story just kind of stops and then continues in the next book, but it's not really like its own wrapped up storyline or anything like that, so I don't really consider this to be 3 books. This was an interesting book to read, particularly because my feelings towards it kind of changed a lot throughout. I definitely felt like this book is way too long. Again, there's no reason for a book that is not high fantasy to be this long. This is a theory that has been proven correct time and time again, and this book is no exception. I honestly don't understand why this was so long. It was a good story and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the characters and I enjoyed the way that it ended and stuff like that. But like, why was it this enormously long? I don't see a reason. There were actual sections of it where it was just describing the most mundane things that these characters did, and I was honestly like internally yelling at the author, like, are you not aware of how long this book already is? Like, this should have been edited out, or at least edited down significantly. If you're not already aware, this book follows 2 characters, Aomame and Tengo. And Tengo is a cram school teacher, but also kind of a writer on the side. He's never published anything. But one day he gets asked by his editor friend to look over a novel that he has seen that was a contestant for a like literary prize, and he really likes the sort of substance of the novel, but he thinks it's horribly written, like the grammar and language is terrible, and he asks Tango basically to rewrite the story so that they can submit it for the literary prize and win it, basically. So yes, that is essentially cheating, and Tango does agree to do this. On the other hand, we follow Aomame, who is like a fitness instructor and also somewhat of an assassin on the side. She kills men who have like perpetrated domestic abuse upon their wives and stuff like that, and one day something in her world changes and she sees 2 moons in the sky, and she starts naming this new world that she finds herself in 1Q84 instead of 1984, and the Q stands for question mark because she just doesn't know where she is. And we go from there, and their lives sort of start to intertwine more and more frequently. Like, there's little things that you pick up on if you read, like, with a certain sense of awareness, that there's so many parallels between their 2 storylines and between their 2 lives, and that was for me the most interesting part. It's just this looking out for the symbolism and this looking out for the parallels. I found that really interesting. So for me personally, I rated the first book in this trilogy 4 stars, the second one 5 stars, and the third one 3 stars. I really liked the second part because it gave us so much insight into what was going on. That was where most of the secrets were uncovered, and I found it really, really interesting. With the third book, I think it was also just my exhaustion of having to read this book that definitely dragged down the rating a little bit, but also because at that point it became apparent to me how much of this plot in this book is just people guessing things and then assuming they're correct. Basically, all of the discoveries made, like probably 99.9% of the discoveries people make in this book are guesswork, and they just assume. They do sometimes say that it is just a hypothesis, that I can't know for sure, but then literally a few sentences later it'll say something like, I know in my heart that this is true. And we as the reader sometimes know that they are correct. And so they just go from there, and that's how they find things out. And it's just kind of annoying. If that happens, like, occasionally, I can buy into this idea of intuition, but if it happens literally all the time, it just seems really, really lazy. And I didn't particularly enjoy that at all. It just requires such a suspension of disbelief from you as the reader, and if you're willing to put that in, then I'm sure this is a even better book for you. But for me, that's where it kind of fell short, and so I gave it 4 stars as like an average of the 3 ratings basically that I gave the individual parts. If you have read 1Q84 for yourself, I'd love for you to let me know what you thought of it. And finally, my 1 5-star read of the month was just a pleasant read all around, and that was Persuasion by Jane Austen. I was gonna say John Austen? What? This, alongside with a 1Q84, was actually on my project TBR for this year, so I'm glad that I have knocked both of these books out. It follows a girl called Anne, and she had like this sort of love story with a man about 10 years ago, I think, but her family dissuaded her from marrying him, and now he kind of comes back into their lives and he's sort of more established, but because Anne rejected I mean, it's sort of like a self-insert story for Jane Austen, so that's probably why I'm calling her Jane, but Anne, but because Anne had rejected him the first time, he's quite cold towards her, and sort of pursues one of her friends instead. I just like these sort of stories. I love Jane Austen's writing. I love the stories. They don't carry the most weight, obviously. They're just about people of very high privilege having very highly privileged problems. But that's just what Jane Austen knew about. That's what she wrote about. And I still really enjoy it. I thought it was well written. It's very short. It's endearing. Captain Wentworth is amazing. And I think if you're like wanting to get into classics, this is definitely a very readable one, and I think anybody would pretty much enjoy this. It's very romance heavy, there's not a lot of difficult language, and it's just lighthearted and fun and amazing. And yeah, that is it for all of the books I read in June. That was a much quicker wrap up than I usually do, so I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Probably editing me is gonna think it's a very good thing indeed. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please give it a like and subscribe to my channel if you're new here, and comment down below what was your favorite book that you read in June. I will see you very soon with a new video. I upload every Tuesday and Friday, and I will see you then. Have a lovely week. Bye!